Alrighty, so yes, it is very late into the night. I actually started getting very tired, but it has to be done. I have to do the preview of the Heineken Rivalry Week game because week like this, I could have easily just not do the preview, but because all these rivalry games that is going to be happening tomorrow, there's no way I'm not going to be doing a preview and look at all of these rivalry game one by one. But that being said, as much as I said that we have rivalry game this week because majority of the game are big derbies that we've seen. We also see a couple of matchups that are not really kind of considered a rivalry, but some that maybe kind of start developing to be a bit of a rivalry. But we start off with the Saturday matinee game. We get two of them on Saturday, and then we get a boatload of action in terms of the Saturday night action, and then we get the two games on Sunday, and that it feels like this is kind of your usual kind of match week for this season, except for the fact that the Sunday games are going to be a little bit late with the Sunday night soccer game being Miami and Orlando, and technically there should be a doubleheader in terms of the Sunday night soccer game because you can easily say El Tráfico counts as a Sunday night soccer game as well. But let us begin by first talk about the Canadian Classic between Montreal and Toronto. And I don't recall that we have seen a Canadian Classic where it's between two of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference, but that's kind of where we are right now. I mean, both of these Canadian teams, and well, Vancouver is just prospering, being at the top of the standings. I mean, if you look at the eastern part of Canada between these two East Coast Canadian teams, yeah, it's been nothing but misery for most part of this season. For Montreal, they have a 1-4-8 record, and I say misery, but Montreal has started to play a little bit better in the last couple of games, and they're facing against the Toronto side have a 2-4-7 record. This game starts at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific, and in terms of the head-to-head matchup, it's actually dead even at 19 wins apiece between these two Canadian team and six draw between both of these teams. And we have seen some great Canadian Classic over the years. I don't know if this is going to be one of those. I mean, we did see when both of these teams play against each other in the Canadian Championship. It was a pretty entertaining game as well. It ends in a 2-2 draw, and then eventually Montreal was able to win in a PK shootout. Though, you got to say, for TFC, they will remember that game as a game where they absolutely should have won that one because they had a 2-0 lead in that one, blew it late in the game. So, yeah, we'll see whether if that's going to be a factor to it, knowing that even though this is a Canadian Classic in league play, this is actually not the first time that both of these teams meet each other this season. Now, moving on, we get the New York Derby, the Hudson River Derby between NYCFC versus the New York Red Bulls. So this will start at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. And throughout the season, I talk about how both of these New York teams are just almost identical this season in terms of having the same problem of not able to win road games and at home looking very spotty. Well, I didn't think that the record would be identical coming into this game as well. 5-3-5 is the record for both of these teams. And in terms of the head-to-head matchup, the Red Bulls does still have the advantage with a 16-4-10 record. And that include one of those wins that happened in the playoffs where, while NYCFC fans will say we're the only New York team to win MLS Cup, Red Bulls fan will basically rebuttal and say, well, we're the only New York team to able to beat you in the playoffs. So yeah, we'll see what the latest chapter of the New York Derby is going to look like, and especially with the way that both of these teams are kind of playing very identical with each other in terms of how the resort has gone. I wonder what happened when they do face off against each other. You kind of had a sense NYCFC might have the advantage because they are playing at home, and the Red Bulls this season just not being able to do well on the road. But that being said, we have seen before the road team can provide some big upset in this Hudson River Derby. And actually, upset is not the right word I would use because there's really no upset in terms of this game because of how identical both of these team is. But definitely the road team has been able to get wins in this Hudson River Derby as well, especially in these last couple of meetings because the road team has really been able to get big win with the Red Bulls getting that 2-0 win in the playoffs to move on into the next round. And then we saw NYCFC going back to the last regular season matchup, winning 5-1 against the Red Bull at Red Bull Arena. Now, moving on, we get the Hell is Real Derby between Columbus versus FC Cincinnati. So while the first two big rivalry, one is between two bottom feeder, the second one is kind of being two identical team having a mediocre season. This is not the case. I mean, anytime when we see a Hell is Real derby, you know it's going to be a good one, especially between two Ohio team that is very good this season as we expected, just like last year. And you just kind of had a sense that yeah, the Eastern Conference might go through Ohio again with these Ohio teams doing relatively well. Although Philly fans will want to have a word with them because they're actually not that far in terms of where Cincinnati is currently at the top of the Eastern Conference. But Cincinnati have a 9-1-3 record, whereas Columbus have a 7-5-1 record. This game starts at 7:15 p.m. Eastern, 4:15 p.m. Pacific, so it starts a little bit earlier compared to the busy 7:30 p.m. Eastern start. But that's mainly because yeah, this game is going to be on the Fox Sports Network. But in terms of the head-to-head matchup, Columbus still has the advantage in the Hell is Real Derby with 7-5-4 record, and there's no doubt that this is also another game where you kind of had a sense that something maybe had to give in this one. Columbus, we know how good they are this season at home. They have not lost a home game so far this season, and I say that because the only loss that they suffer this season, even though it says they're the designated home team. I mean, I'm pretty sure Columbus fans saying that losing in Cleveland does not count as a home game, especially. I'm pretty sure Columbus fans are still very upset the fact that that game was played in Cleveland instead of at lower.com field. And Cincinnati, one of the best team on the road this season. They've only lost once so far this season at home or on the road, that is, and that was against NYCFC. But yeah, I'm very excited to see what the latest chapter of the Hell is Real Derby is going to be. And again, this might be a rivalry we might see in the playoffs, and maybe one that we could see just like a couple of years ago in the Eastern Conference Final. Now, moving on, we got New England versus the San Jose Earthquake. So this is a game where I would say that out of all these kind of big notable rivalry, this is one that I would say that not many people realize that this definitely is going to be a rivalry because yeah, you know who is coaching the Quakes right now. You know deep down Bruce Arena. I know he won't admit it, but I think he'll probably be really looking for to this one, especially I think the thing that we still don't know to this day, and I wish we would have known what happened in this situation. We still don't know why Bruce Arena was let go of the New England Revolution, and there's no doubt that he wants to get the best out of it in this one. And especially you can even say that this feels like how whenever the Union play against Cincinnati, how it seems like both of those teams are trading players and also trading front office. It feels like this is kind of the same thing. And we said that in that game between Cincinnati and the Union, it's like Union West versus Union East. This feels like it's Union. This feels like it's Revolution East versus Revolution West. New England is basically Revolution East. San Jose is basically Revolution West with all the familiar player that is on this team. But in terms of the head-to-head meeting, 4-3-3 in favor of the New England Revolution. The Quakes have always tends to struggle when they play on the road against New England. They do much better when they're playing against them at home, even though there hasn't really been a lot of meeting between both of these teams in recent memory. But like I said, I'm very interested to see what Bruce has up his sleeve, and especially deep down he want to win this one badly, and trying to carry that momentum that they sort of had after that 3-3 result. I mean, the Quakes actually have been unbeaten in the last couple of weeks. They've actually now gone 4 games without a loss and have played some really entertaining soccer to do so. And you could say the same case for New England as well, at least compared to the last game where they really played their best attacking game, but on the defensive side was a little bit sloppy in the way that Caleb Porter would love to see against Orlando City. Now, moving on, we got Charlotte versus the Chicago Fire. So it is not very often to see that all these southeastern team are not facing against each other, because I thought for a Heineken rivalry week, I would have assumed Atlanta would have played Charlotte, or Atlanta would have played Nashville, or even Charlotte play against Nashville SC. But no, all these southeastern teams, they get to play another opponent in the Eastern Conference. In the case of Charlotte, they're playing against Chicago in this one. But Charlotte have a 6-1-6 record, whereas Chicago, they have a pretty even number of 4 wins, 4 draw, and 4 losses. Now, in terms of head-to-head matchup, 5-0-1 in favor of Charlotte FC. In fact, this is actually a rare home game for Charlotte. As I mentioned, they're gonna have a lot of games on the road heading into the stretch. This is one of the rare time that they're playing at home, and deep down they desperately need a win right now because this team is going the wrong direction. Dean Smith's side not only is struggling on the attacking side once again, but now it seems like the defense have really cratered. Even the goalkeeping has really regressed during this bad run of form. Whereas for Chicago, they have been a little bit inconsistent this season. I would say kind of inconsistent in a good way compared to previous season where when they're inconsistent, it's very frustrating to see. But we'll see whether or not if they can build up the first home win that they have last week, especially against the Charlotte team. That again, this was a couple of weeks ago. I would say Chicago probably had no chance against Charlotte because of how good Charlotte has been at home, but because of the fact that Charlotte has not been playing relatively well, and I'm pretty sure that they desperately need a win, and especially return home. The good news is they're back at home in this one. The bad news is they did lose their last home game, and you wonder how the confidence is going to be like for this team, even if they know that they have a relatively good home form. If you're not playing well, it really doesn't matter the fact that you can rely on that, except for the fact that you're really hoping that it would be the case, especially that home crowd at Bank of America Stadium. They're definitely gonna have to play a part to try to snap out of their favorite team in terms of going the wrong direction right now in the Eastern Conference. Speaking of teams that go in the wrong direction, that's kind of where Atlanta is. But they've been going the wrong direction for a while now, and it doesn't help the fact that they face against the Philadelphia Union. I remember a couple of years that this was a really big rivalry, especially with both of these teams playing the CONCACAF Champions Cup. I think that kind of rivalry sake has kind of started to fade away, similar to where we used to see a big rivalry between Atlanta and the New York Red Bulls when both of these teams were very good. Yeah, not so much lately, but. Atlanta with a 2-5-6 record. The Union 8-2-3, and this is the last game that starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Or actually, no, this is the last game I'll talk about. All three of these games starts at the same time. This one, of course, starts also pretty much around the same time, just a little bit earlier. The Union have a 6-7-5 advantage over Atlanta in this one. And again, with the struggle that Atlanta has had so far this season, you would expect the Philadelphia Union should get the 3 points in this game. Although I would say that the Union did struggle in the game against the Galaxy, especially putting the chances away until late in the game, and we'll see whether or not. I'm pretty sure for Bradley Carnell's side, he definitely does not want his team to go down 2-0 in the game and have to crawl their way back. I mean, they're very fortunate that they were facing against a Galaxy team that just everything seems to go wrong with the Galaxy right now because against any other team there was no doubt that it would have been more difficult for them to overcome that 2-0 deficit that they had in the middle of the week if they were playing against an actual good team. Though I say that, but don't be surprised if Atlanta get a 2-0 lead in this one, and the Union would somehow come back to win this game because just like the Galaxy, nothing has gone right for Atlanta this season. It's been one of the most disappointing season that Atlanta has had, and I say one of the most disappointing and not most disappointing. There's been a lot of disappointment for Atlanta in these last couple of years, and it just feels like they're not. It doesn't feel like every time we think that they're gonna get back to the height that they were in the first 2 years in the league by spending money, it just kind of blow up in their face time and time again. Now, moving on, we got Nashville versus DC United. So both of these teams are kind of heading in opposite direction. Nashville, after them being a little bit inconsistent and unpredictable at times, it feels like BJ Callahan has finally got the balance of this team right. They're starting to go on a good run of form. You can't say the same about DC. They've been kind of been poor as what we expect throughout the season with a 3-4-6 record. Nashville has a 7-2-4 record. This is the first of 4 games that start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. So a lot of game that's going to be kicking off in the Central time zone, which means there's going to be a lot of game that's going to be meshed up all at once in terms of this Heineken rivalry week. But in terms of the head-to-head, 4-2-2 in favor of Nashville SC. So this is a game that you expect Nashville to win. They've been relatively strong this season at Geodis Park and against a DC team that have not been playing well for the most part of this season. You would expect Nashville should get the win in this one. The key words is they should beat. Now, moving on, we got Minnesota take on St. Louis City. So for Minnesota, in the middle of the week, they decided to kind of punt that game away. I've already shared my feelings for that. I wasn't really happy at the fact that they decided to that game away, even though I understand that, Eric Ramsey need to rest his team and maybe kind of test the depth to see how it is. But I feel like there's one thing to test the depth, and then there's another where they just decided to completely change the roster, and you can clearly see that it really upsets the balance of the team. And in some way, they kind of feel like they didn't respect the Houston Dynamo, and they were made to pay by losing that game and really destroy the momentum that they would have had after that 4-1 win that they had against Miami. Now, the good news is that there's a chance that they can bounce back against a team that is definitely not doing well. Although I say that Minnesota has had their struggle this season against bad team. I mean, it is hard to believe that when you look at the teams that is near the bottom of the standings that Minnesota has already played, they have not picked up a lot of points against those teams. And while they have done well, at least against teams that have done relatively well or at least mediocre this season, that is a big concern. The fact that they're not picking points against teams that are not doing very well, and especially the schedule is going to get tougher for this Minnesota team. I mean, I look ahead at the schedule; they got some really tough games coming up. So with the way that they're not able to capitalize against these easy opponent, I mean, I know they're still sitting very well in the standings, but man, that makes me very nervous. The fact that they're not winning these easy games, and when they do have to face against tougher team, it's almost like they have to win it against those tougher teams if they want to maintain where they are in the standings. Though I say that, but St. Louis, they have something to prove in this one as well. And especially, you got to say that these next couple of weeks, Olaf Melper might be playing for his job because, this has just been a disastrous season so far for St. Louis. 9 games without a win coming into this game, and then their latest misery with a 2-0 blown lead against Sporting KC over the middle of the week. They have a 2-5-6 record, and in terms of head-to-head matchup, 3-0-1 in favor of Minnesota. Minnesota has done very well when they play against St. Louis, and that include last year when they absolutely thrashed St. Louis in that game. And I expect it should be the same way in this one, especially I'm expecting Eric Ramsey have learned his lesson and probably is going to put the starters in this one. I mean, there's no excuse to not put the starter in this one, and there is also absolutely no excuse to not win this game for Minnesota because you rest your guys and kind of punt that game away, and maybe that's just kind of an experiment to do so. Well, I understand that you might try to do that, especially if it's a midweek kind of game. But there's better way to do it than what Aaron Ramsey did. I did not like how he decided to really just completely rest the team and almost in some way now put all eggs in one basket that they need to win this game to keep up in the standings because despite the fact that they're still pretty high up in the Western Conference, they're not leading that much when it comes to teams that just below them. The West is very jumbled up. If this Minnesota team started to go on a bit of a slide, they could tumble down the standing relatively quick. Now, moving on, we got the Texas Derby between FC Dallas and the Houston Dynamo. So this is another derby, just like the Canadian Classic, and in some extents in the New York Derby, where it's kind of between two very mediocre teams so far this season. I mean, Dallas has been probably the most frustrating team to watch, both as a Dallas fan perspective and also as a neutral, because you just don't know what kind of Dallas team would show up. You just don't know if it's gonna be a Dallas team that's going to be playing some fun brand of soccer that Peter Quill play some crazy game, or you're going to see a Dallas team that is just going to be boring to hell to watch. Now they face against the Houston Dynamo in this one, who has a 3-4-6 record. Ben Olsen started to kind of figure things out for this Dynamo team because lately they actually have been on a pretty good run of form, getting a couple of wins there to get their season kick started. But yeah, this is a game that I also would not be surprised if this game ends in a draw and might be a low scoring draw because it feels like there's always that narrative that the Texas Derby and El Capitan always ends in a draw between both all of these teams. And I also won't be surprised it might be low scoring as well because, as I said, as unpredictable as Dallas is when it comes to this season, they play a lot of low scoring games when they're playing at home. And, they tend to have struggle in terms of scoring goals at home, which is kind of weird because, on the road, they actually do a much better job in terms of scoring goals and have more high scoring games. That's just kind of adds to the frustration and the kind of the baffling thing you got to say about Peter Quill's side, where for whatever reason they just can't. It's kind of weird to see how can they be so good at one point on the attacking end, and then the very next game they just look absolutely horrendous. Now, speaking of horrendous, especially on the attacking end, you could say the same thing about Austin FC. I mean, it's been not only back down to reality, but this doesn't help the fact that the very next game that they have to face, and this is also why they had to win that game against Atlanta United, because now you play against the team that I'm pretty sure no one want to play right now in the Vancouver Whitecaps, who just cannot stop winning and continue this long unbeaten run that I think they have now got like 10 games without a loss and have the longest unbeaten run out of any team right now in MLS with an 8-3-1 record, whereas Austin have a 5-2-6 record. And in terms of the head-to-head matchup, it also doesn't help the fact that Vancouver has absolutely owned Austin over the years. 6-2-1 is the head-to-head record, and I expect it's going to be the same thing because yeah, Vancouver is a wagon this season. Austin is not so. I mean, the goals not only have dried up to this team, but with the way that Vancouver has been playing, I mean, Austin is probably going to be very fortunate that they don't lose this one badly. And especially the last time when both of these teams face off against each other, yeah, Austin lost 5-1 in that game. They're definitely not looking for to facing against this Whitecaps team again. I mean, we've seen before where I will say that at least for us fans, the hope is the fact that you expect maybe Nico Estevez make some adjustment to come back that 5-1 beatdown that they suffer early this season against Vancouver, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure the Whitecaps will feel like, well, we already beat them 5-1 once. All we have to do is kind of do the same thing, or at least close to that, and this should be a relatively comfortable victory and continue to extend our unbeaten run and also extend their lead that they have in the supporter shield standing. We're living a weird world when the Vancouver Whitecaps are leading the supporter shield since day number one, but that's just kind of the world that we're living in right now. Now, moving on, we got the Cascadia derby between the Portland Timbers versus Seattle, and as I said many times before, I know that the hype will always surround El Trafico the and the Hell is Real Derby has now been the two derbies that might have now surpassed this derby as the most exciting and the most looked for in derby in MLS so far. But I'm just gonna keep saying that I still think this is the granddaddy of them all in terms of heritage and history. This derby will take the cake, and those two other derby I mentioned will come nowhere near close in terms of the historic hatred between both of these teams. But that being said, this is also a game where yeah, when you expect entertainment, you're probably not gonna find that because when you look at these or not the Canadian Cascadia derby, I am getting really tired right now. Like I just realized it's like 20 minutes past midnight. But when comes to looking at this Cascadia derby, there hasn't really been some classic Cascadia derby over the years. But that being said, this game will start at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. I believe this game is going to be on FS1 as well. This is kind of part of the doubleheader that they have between the Hell is Real derby between Columbus and FC Cincinnati in the Fox Sports Network. And in terms of head-to-head matchup, 20, 10, and 18 in favor of the Portland Timbers. So yeah, we'll see how this latest addition to the Cascadia Derby is going to look like. Keep in mind, Seattle rested a lot of their players in that LAFC game, and the Timbers, they also rested a couple of guys against RSL, but not as much as what we see against Seattle. So it's going to be interesting to see with full strength how both of these teams is going to look in the latest chapter of the Cascadia Derby. So we go from the Cascadia Derby to now the Rocky Mountain Cup between Colorado and RSL. So just like the Texas Derby and also the Canadian Classic, it's kind of between two very mediocre team. Although one team is definitely going through a downward spiral, and the other team is just kind of stuck in that mediocrity range that is RSL with a 4-2-7 record, whereas Colorado 4-4-5 and has just really gone off the rails in this last couple of weeks, going on a brutal losing run. But in terms of the head-to-head meeting, we know that when it comes to Rocky Mountain Cup, RSL has pretty much had a lot of the ownage over Colorado. 24-9-9 is their record, but as I said, the one thing that RSL does at least kind of struggle in the Rocky Mountain Cup is that they at times have struggled when they play on the road. I believe the last couple of times when the Rocky Mountain Cup is at Inglewood Park, Colorado usually gets the win. So let's see whether or not that is going to be the case in this one, especially they desperately need a win to snap out of this bad run of form, and especially against probably one of the weaker RSL team that they face in recent memory. They'll definitely happily take advantage of this game and maybe get a big result to kind of get their season back on track, because it's hard to believe just a couple of months ago we were talking about a great job that Chris Armas have done to this team, getting themselves once again in competitive edge, but it has just kind of fallen apart in these last couple of weeks. They just does not look like the same good team that we saw in the beginning of the season compared to where we are in the last couple of games. Now, moving on into the last game on this board is San Diego FC versus Sporting KC. So San Diego 7-2-4, and remember that bad run of form that they had where they lost 3 out of the last 4 games, and people were saying, "Oh, looks like they're starting to getting fined out. Looks like the reality is starting to settle in." Yeah, these last couple of games they're saying, "What reality?" Because it feels like they're back on track, and that I think part of the reason why they're back on track is that I feel like Mikey Veras have started to make some adjustment to a point where they're still dominating the possession, but there's no doubt that he has made some adjustment to kind of make them a little bit much more aggressive going for the on the attack, and maybe moving the ball a little bit faster compared to what we see before. Because before, I think they were just moving the ball way too slow, even with the possession that they have. But now it seems like they're moving the ball much faster, and it's no surprise the fact that not only they continue to be the protagonists in the game, but with the way that they're moving much faster, and especially the attack has started to hum once again. It's no surprise that this team is on a relatively good run. Now, they are facing against a Sporting KC side that is fresh off of a 2-2 resort against St. Louis, and a kind of a come from behind victory as well. Sporting KC, I know that they still hasn't playing relatively well when it comes to playoff contention, but I will say that they definitely play much better after the firing of Peter Ramirez, and that's not a big surprise. We knew that they were going to be better in the post Peter Ramirez era, except for on the defensive end. Their defense is still suck, and that's kind of the big concern coming into this game, because when you're facing against a San Diego side that has been pretty good on the attacking side, yeah, Sporting KC is going to have to try to outscore San Diego in this game. Isn't there? But this is also the only game that starts at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, and as it usually is the case with San Diego, at least early in the season, this is going to be the first ever meeting that both of these teams will face off against each other. Now, going into the Sunday game, we start off with the Florida derby between Inter Miami versus Orlando City, and because I'm really tired right now, I can't remember the Spanish name of this rivalry. It's something to do with like the soul or something like that. Yeah. Again, I can't remember the Spanish name, so I'm just gonna refer this as the Florida Derby because both of these teams are based out of Florida. But Miami, they have a 6-4-2 record, whereas Orlando City has a 5-6-2 record. As this game starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and so far in this Florida Derby, it's 5 wins apiece for both of these teams and 4 draw. Now Orlando has had their struggle when they play against Inter Miami on the road. Inter Miami has definitely played much better against Orlando City when they're playing at home, and it's kind of vice versa on the other end, where Orlando City actually have done really well against Inter Miami when they're playing at their house, and I also think that Miami has not got a win against Orlando City at Explorer Stadium, and that's even with Messi and friends. But I will also say that for Orlando, if there is a time where they face the superstar known as Inter Miami, and especially facing Messi and friends, that they might be very competent, this is the game to do so, because, as I said, this Inter Miami team, they have not looked like their old self, and especially the reason why they don't look like their old self is because they're letting a lot of goals go past them, and especially with how Orlando has been really good on the attacking end. Well, mostly at home, that is. On the road, it's kind of weird the fact that they aren't able to show the same case. Like, I talk about some teams that I just kind of feel like baffle when it comes to why they're much better on attacking at home compared to their on the road. And I say with Dallas, it's kind of the opposite, with Dallas being better on the road attacking than at home. I'm gonna say the same thing with Orlando City, but just reverse, where for whatever reason this team does well on the attacking end when they're playing at home, but on the road they have played a lot of nil-nil draw and have played some very uninspiring nil-nil draw. Something tells me, though, I don't think this is going to be a nil-nil draw. I mean, I'll be shocked if this is a nil-nil draw. You know there's going to be goals. Miami usually never play to a nil-nil draw, even though I've seen before where both of these teams play to a nil-nil draw before. I think there's going to be goals in this game, and I would not be surprised if this could be a high scoring affair between two teams that, yeah, have a very good attack, but on the defensive side, that is definitely questionable at times. Now, moving on into the last game on the board, and speaking of games that will definitely not have a no draw, I mean, there's a better chance of us seeing two blue moon in the same month then we see a no draw between the LA Galaxy and LAFC. You know El Trafico will always deliver. And I know on paper, when you look at the record, you would think LAFC is going to destroy the Galaxy, isn't it? I mean, they have a much better record. The Galaxy, it's been nothing but pain for them this season, especially these last three games. I mean, I even mentioned this is probably the most difficult free game stretch I've ever seen an MLS team go through, especially the way that the Galaxy have losing games. But if there's one thing that I've also said about the Galaxy, that the good news about them dealing with these incredibly painful losses is the fact that you can definitely wash away those memories with a win against LAFC. And I know it sounds crazy, the fact that the Galaxy might have a chance against LAFC, but in El Trafico, it just feels like it's a tactic-free zone kind of game. Tactics are pretty much completely thrown out of the window. The defense at times can also be thrown out the window as well. You know that there's going to be a lot of goals, and it's going to be a fun brand of soccer. And there's a reason why this rivalry is probably labeled as the most exciting rivalry and the most watch rivalry in MLS. I mean, I don't think now that I can really can't say that it's because of the media hype. It's really just look at all these games that between the Galaxy and LAFC at play. It just feels like every single game there's always big narrative, and there's never a game where you see the Galaxy and LAFC play where you say, "Oh, this kind of felt like a bit of a disappointment where it didn't live up to the hype." But that being said, in terms of the head-to-head meeting, LA Galaxy still have a slight advantage over LAFC in terms of the head-to-head meeting in El Trafico. 10-5-9 is their record. And also, not to mention the fact that even though it's not really kind of MLS After Dark on the West Coast, you might as well say it is with the way that this game is going to kick off late, and that for those East Coaster that is going to be watching this one as well. Yeah, like I said, when the time gets deep into the night, you know there's going to be some crazy things. And I also would not be surprised if the Galaxy can finally end their their record-breaking winless run to start the season in this game against LAFC. I just had a feeling that of all games that they could do so, they can definitely do it against LAFC. And this is not to knock on LAFC of them playing badly. LAFC actually has been playing really well these last couple of games, and they must be prepared for this game as well. But I just think that because of the emotion that gets in this game, and because of how much this game is, feels like it's a tactic free kind of type of games where all kind of form and all sort of narrative and tactics that we've seen from previous game is just going to be thrown out of the window. It's almost like a coin toss to see who at the end of the day will capitalize on those crucial moments and score the most goal, because there's going to be a lot of goals that could be scored between the Galaxy and LAFC whenever we see an El Trafico. But there we have it. That is pretty much it when it comes to looking at all of these games for match week number 14, also known as Heineken Rivalry Week, and previewing them. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of all these games, and make sure you leave comments below your prediction for these Heineken Rivalry games, and even some games that aren't considered to be a rivalry game, but still could be entertaining match in terms of match week number. I think this is now number 14, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it is number 14. As pretty much most of these teams are playing their 14th game this season. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.